Good afternoon and welcome to the Rail Baltica Academy. My name is Lieva Biseniec and I will be moderating today's event. This is our third event where we are offering an opportunity to learn from Rail Baltica senior experts on how to plan, design and construct a cross-border rail. As for today, we will hear from Jean-Marc Bedmar, who is the head of Systems and Operations Department at RB Rail. He will be talking about Rail Baltica electrification project. We have planned about an hour and a half for this presentation, and we encourage you to ask questions already during the presentation. We will stop in several places during the presentation to take your questions. So please write them in the chat section. After this, next week we will have the final session this year with our expert Raitis Bušmanis, and he will talk about building information management at Rail Baltica project. And from here now, I hand over to Jean-Marc. Jean-Marc, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. So I'm very happy to present you today some insight about railway electrification, and more precisely regarding the electrification of Rail Baltica, which will be the Europe's largest railway electrification project today. So altogether, we are going to ask some questions and try to provide some answers about railway electrification. And first one will be why we are electrifying railways, and then to do so, how many power do we need? What is an electrification systems? Then what will be the main feature of Rail Baltica electrification, so our project? And then finally, is it electrification the best way to decarbonize transport systems? So let's start by the first questions, which will be why we shall electrify the railways. What are the reasons for this? I would say reasons. First one is clearly economic ones, that the train traction is much more cost effective in electric mode compared to the other mode, in particular to diesel mode. There is much higher available tractive power, up to double. The electrical traction costs are 35% of diesel traction cost, and also the rolling stock maintenance costs are reduced in similar magnitudes. But on the other side, the infrastructure capex, so investment costs to realize these electrification systems, and the OPEX, that are the operation and maintenance costs of electrification system, of course, are increased. The capex for electrification system are quite high, and this is more than 250 euro per kilometers. Sorry, 1,000 euro per kilometers of single track. For the maintenance costs, they are usually on the magnitude of 5,000 euro per kilometer of single track. So in consequence, the density of the traffic and the funding availability are the main criteria for the decision to realize one electrification of railway line. So looking now a little bit more in details, these diagrams are showing the maintenance cost for electrical and diesel locomotive compared for all the lifetimes of such locomotives. So you can see that on the west part of this drawing, you have the electrical locomotives, and the first element on the left are all the elements who are linked to the tractive systems, bogies, brakes, and these elements are common. But we can see on the right side, which is a diesel locomotive, at the cost of all the diesel engines, it's absolutely the major cost of this locomotive. And overall, the cost of maintenance of electric locomotive is just about 1/3 of the one of diesel locomotive. So what about the second reasons about highway electrification? So this is environmental reasons. So you all know that global warming requires emergency reactions to decarbonize the economy. So this is true for every country and whatever sector of economy. And here in transport sector, it accounts in the Baltic states about 30% of energy consumptions and of CO2 emissions. So this is nothing but a minor sector regarding environmental impact of transport. And therefore, to decarbonize railways is a tool that will help to decarbonize the transport sector. But we'll come back a little bit later to this topic. So let's start now by some more fundamental questions about what is the power, electrical power, what is needed to all the trains. So actually, this is the result of course, a physics phenomena. We are going to go on this more in details. So if we look the energy needed to move a train on flat and straight track, so this is result of two physics interactions. First one is the rolling resistance of the train composition. So you have mechanical frictions, rolling resistance of all different components inside the rolling stock. And these parameters are actually dependent of every type of locomotive, multiple unit, wagon, and coach. All these elements are, have different features for this rolling resistance. And in similar ways, the second parameter is air drag resistance. The air friction on face of the trains, on the side and between elements, are also parameters who are completely depending on the rolling stock. So this rolling resistance and air drag resistance can only be determined by experimental measurements. And this is true for every type of elements, locomotives, coach, wagons, but also for overall train composition. In order to make assessment of the train resistance, Mr. Davis has made an analysis in 1926 and proposed one overall formula that can summarize the dynamic of trains and all the train resistance. And so this resistance actually is based on three factors. The first one is the one resistance with rolling resistance, and this is independent of the train speed. So this is all the bearing resistance at the level of the wheels and axles. Then we have a coefficient B, which is used to define the train resistance with proportional to the train speed. And this is also some mechanical aspect linked to the flange resistance and train dynamic losses. And then the factor C is linked to the square of the speed of the train, and this is the aerodynamic factors which are linked to this factor. So finally, we can see that this component A, B, and C were fully dependent of rolling trains, and they can define one various composition of trains. But actually, the David equation is not valid for the speed close to 0 km, as it doesn't consider effort necessary to put in movement one-stop trains. This is a fully equivalent situation that you all experience when you have tried to push one-stop cars. The energy, the effort needed to start to move the cars is always much higher than the effort needed to make me moving after they start to move. Yeah. And actually, this train static effort is needed to compensate rolling resistance of the wheels, the suspension effect, coupler effect, and also frost effect was worsening in this case at low temperature. Yeah. And altogether, the starting force for trains may be superior to the force needed to move a train at the speed of 80-100 km on flat gradient. But of course, all the tracks are not flats, and they are indeed gradients. And when running in incline, additional energy is of course needed to overcome the gravity forces. So the grade resistance follow this law that you can see on this slide. And this is proportional to the weight of the trains and to the slope of the incline. Yeah. So there is approximation. We are in small angle of slope, and then basically the sinus of angle is equal to the angle, and then we can express this value in millimeter per meter or per mil, and the value in the railways are normally up to 25 or 35 for high-speed lines. But for cargo traffic, this value shall be much lower as the weight of cargo train are heaviest and typically under 8 per mil. Then we have also the curve effect. So this effect characterizes resistance of the curves when the train is running in this curve. So this will be proportional to the weight of the vehicle, some friction coefficients, but will be divided by the radius of the curves. And all together, we can see that the curve effect is negligible for the curve of radius superior to 1,500 meters. That will be the case for Rail Baltica when the nominal radius of the curve is 4,000 meters. So then a kind of summarize that is showing an overview for the different transport types of the resistance for the dynamic of this mobile movement. So this is for both trucks and airplanes. So depending on the speed, on one side, you can see what is the resistance for every transported ton. So this is Newton per tons. For different type of transport. And you can see that the rail transport, the wheel rail contact, it combine high speed, possibility of high speed, and low resistance. So in this curve, actually, this curve is, I think, more a US curve. And actually, the trains are stopping at 180, but in Europe, we can extend this curve more on the extend this curve, and we can have the same type of transport, especially for passenger until 300 kilometers per hour also. So this is about the intrinsic capabilities of rail transport. Maybe we can take the first questions.
Any questions so far about the key concepts? I don't see any questions yet, Jean-Marc, in the chat section. So perhaps they will start coming a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
In such case, I think we can continue.
Okay. Yeah. So after having analyzed the trend dynamic, we have now to look on the side of the traction engine, so locomotive typically. And we have also some other physical equation here, and that are showing what is the force available for one tractive engine, locomotive, depending also of the speed. For a constant power of the locomotive, which is, let's say, maximum power that this engine can deliver, we can see that the force will decrease with the speed. So that's very important parameter to understand, because the higher speed will be, the less the tractive force of locomotive available at the wheel will be high. So going more in the details and making kind of synthesis of the two parts, the locomotive parts and also the trend dynamic. So these light blue curves that you can see, so this is the Davis formula plus the traction effort at the start of the trains. Then you have this hyperbole of decreasing hyperbole of the constant power line of the locomotive. And then at the lower speed, you have one limiting factor, which is the adhesion limit. So the wheel rail contact has some limit in the transmission of the effort. And then the locomotive itself is limited by some anti-sliding devices and have a constant effort line, this AB segment, below the adhesion limit. Yeah. And then we will have the maximum speed limit of the locomotive, which is given by also all the wheels, bogies, and this is also a factor which is determined by manufacturers. So we can see in such case that the maximum speed that could be reached by the train will be given by the intersection of the Davies equation and the tractive curve of the locomotive. So some typical values of the traction powers of locomotives. So in electric traction, one locomotive is typically for 4 to 10 megawatts compared to diesel with, let's say, roughly half power of electric. And of course, different values are possible. That depends of the need. What is the purpose of the locomotive? If it is a locomotive to all passenger train with quite higher speed, or to all cargo train with a lower speed, that's a lot of parameters to define and exactly size of the high power which is needed. So electrical multiple units. So this EMU acronym means actually when you have a train of fixed composition. Also, we can call this a train set. So this is the case of high-speed line of regional trains. This is on the train composed of one locomotive and wagon, but different elements. We have a transport allow to transport passenger, but we have also some tractive part on the trains. So these high-speed trains are from 250 to 320. Have a power for one train set of 5 to 10 megawatt. And for the regional trains, we have lower speed and then 2 to 6 megawatt. Of course, that depends on the length of the trains and number of passengers who can be transported. So regarding the tonnage of the trains, high-speed trains is about 450 tons. Regional is 200 to 300 tons. Night trains are a bit heavier, 550 tons. And then the freight trains are, of course, the heaviest one from 1,200 to 6,000 tons. That's the figure that we can get on Rail Baltica. So now, if we are looking a little bit in the more dynamic way and what is the energy needed and power consumption, considering the speed of the trains, from a train which is starting from station or stop at signals until the line speed. You can see actually two types of energy which is needed. But of course, this is the same energy, but this is needed for two different reasons. So energy in red. So this is exactly the Davies formula. So this is the energy you have to deliver to the locomotive to face the train resistance. And that's increasing according exactly the curves that we have seen in previous slide. Then the power in blue, this is the power which is required for the acceleration of the locomotives. So we are using this blue power until the time when we have reached the line, the speed, maximum speed of the line that is required for this train. So this is a cargo train, quite heavy one, 6,000 tons, very heavy trains. This is hauling this cargo. So we can see that, and the speed is quite low, and this is 80 km per hour. In Rail Baltica, we probably will go a little bit faster, 100 for such heavy trains. And we can see that the time that we need, it's about 6 minutes and 40 seconds to reach the maximum speed, and that's about 6 kilometers to run. But why discussing this curve? Just to show that actually the energy which is needed by trains will be actually very variable according to which phase of the trip it is. Of course, all the acceleration phase will require much more energy than the cruise, and the cruise will require less energy than the phase of deceleration and stoppage of the trains. So for one particular train, the power demand is vary at actually every second the power demand is different at what is asked by the trains. So, so we have seen that every trains have actually so different power demand along the time. But we have now to consider that if we look the overview of one land section, if we are powering, we have somewhere one, we'll speak later, one substation which is powering one section of line. On this section of line, you have many trains who are running. So this is the time distance graph, which is normally used to define timetable of train traffic. On the this horizontal axis, you have the distance, and you can see some typical station of Rail Baltica. This one are in Latvia, north of north and south of Riga. On the vertical axis, this is the time. So this is a period of 2 hours in the peak time in the morning. So we have high-speed trains in that we are actually in red. And they are making some stops, as you can see, during some few minutes. And this is the red trains. They are going in 2 directions. And the same, then you have regional trains in green. And then you have cargo trains who are also going in this orange. So all these trains have different transport demand. They are running different sections of the lines where there is different gradient up and down. They have different service. They are stopping in different places. They have different locomotive and different tonnage. So all this value was combining for this in this area to deliver a sum of the power demand at for the train traction. This is the full combination of all these different individual train demand. So we can see an example of what is electrical power, which is requested by one electrical section for electrical traction. So this is very, very variable function, and actually you can make some estimate when you need to design such electrification systems. You have to, on the basis of all the type of trains, of the infrastructure parameter, gradient, of the different timetable, where the train shall stop, what are maximum speed, rolling stock parameters. You have to combine this in the complex software simulation in order to be able to have an estimate of the power demand that you will have in such area. And that's actually one of the main starting point of input for the designing the railway electrification. The power demand analysis in every section shall be made in a very accurate way. And this shall be also made considering that the traffic will be changing, increasing, hopefully, in the years after starting to operate the line. So all these parameter and assumption shall be estimated and computed in this system. So just maybe last points of Rail Baltica, just to give an estimate. We need to install a power about 0.75 megawatt or megavolt ampere per kilometer of double track. So this just giving an estimate of the power, but we are going to detail this furthermore. So I believe we can take some questions, please.
We still haven't received any questions, Jean-Marc.
So no question, maybe it's, everybody understands, or maybe it's a little bit too complicated. Okay, so let's continue and let's add a little bit some more, let's say, information. And let's go now in the core of our topic and what is an electrification system. Yeah. First of all, just to a little bit limit our discussion today, there are different types of electrification systems. So this is for historical reasons, the different evolution of technologies. It was there were different limitations in the beginning of the electrical traction, step by step, that was overcame by new technologies and new assumptions, new understandings, and this is why there was different systems developed in Europe. Historically, it was a first electrification where in DC, that is direct current, so in 1.5 and 3 kilovolt DC. So these electrification are still in operation in this country. So typically, we can see here in Latvia, we have 3 kilovolt DC was being implemented after Second War, and is still under operation today. In country Germany, Austria, Sweden, Norway, we have a special case. This is an alternative current of 15 kilovolt, but using special frequency of 16.67 Hertz, which is 1/3 of 50 Hertz. So there is also reason underneath, but we cannot develop this today. And this is still under operation today. But the most common systems for the new infrastructure and high-speed lines, and this is for all around the world, now is 25 kilovolt, alternative current 50 Hertz, which is used for highway electrification. And this is the one we are going to detail, as this is Rail Baltica type of electrification. Railway electrification system. So this is composed of one, of course, rolling stock. We have the pantograph. We have overhead catenary systems, the most visible systems, all the cables above the rails. Traction return current system. This one is completely invisible, and this is that's why we have to make a small focus on it. And we have the traction substation. This one are powering the electrification system, and then the electrical control command system. This is the place when all electrification is controlled and commanded. So let's start by the pantograph. So this is this mechanical device implemented on the roof of the trains. His mission is to collect current from the catenary systems. So this is up to 500 amps for this 25 kV electrification. So this is quite complex mechanical system. So there is 2 suspension levels. The main one, which is with the arms, and the second one with the level of this the small device, archette. I don't know the proper maybe technical term in English, which is also with a suspension they are make in order to follow different variation of the catenary, and this is actually has been improved around the years, because the current, the quality of the current collection shall be a very high level, whatever the speed. And as far as the high-speed train has been developed, it was necessary to improve pantograph in order to still allow to collect the current. So the surface which is used with friction with the contact wire of the catenary, so this is made on the basis of carbon. This is carbon tip contact surface. So a little bit more in detail. So you can see on the below figures that we have this contact wire, which is actually not in the axis of the track. And this is very important. The contact wire of the catenary is not straight. It has a sag. And this is important parameters. So typically plus minus 20 centimeters, but it could be sometimes more. And this is in order to not have excessive wear of the pantograph, and then this geometry of the catenary will allow to have a sweeping movement of the catenary on the surface of the pantograph. So that's important design parameters. Yeah. So you can see the picture on that on this catenary system. You can visibly see it. This catenary is not straight. Yeah. So the overall catenary systems, this is so in charge of distributing the current to the pantograph and implementing above the track. So this OCS is subject to many mechanical constraints. So pantograph contact, of course, But most of all, this is variation of temperature. All these mechanical devices are long, linear metallic structures, and they are actually subject to dilatation and retractation of this metal on quite a wide effect. And all these different length variation should be compensated. The order of mechanical parameter at the pantograph level should always be constant, whatever the temperature variation is. And additionally, we have also wind effect. Transversal wind on catenary can be an issue for highways, especially at high speed. And in our regions, ice load is a very important parameters. If you have icing conditions, ice could accumulate around the catenary wire, contact wire and catenary wires, and until one moment when this load will be not possible to be borne by the system, and we can have a destruction and fall of the catenary system. So some component of the catenary are detailed in this drawing. So we have the poles, cantilever we fix on the pole. We have the catenary itself. Also some disconnector, so that's an element to switch on, switch off on the catenary. Insulator, of course, an important device, as only catenary shall be under live power, not the mast. And we have also one feeder line that is implemented on this catenary system. Important topic is a long lifetime which is required for the overhead catenary systems. We can get up to 30 to 50 years of the contact wire, so this is quite surprising, because this metallic copper cable actually will be in friction with the pantograph, so it is expected that it will be with a shorter lifetime, but actually the pantograph carbon parts are the ones who are worn faster. They are softer materials, and the contact wire could be 30 to 50 years depending on traffic before its replacement. Of the structural part of catenary could be 70, 80, up to 100 years for this structure, like typically the catenary mast. So that's very long lifetime, and that's also what we are aiming in Rail Baltica, to have long lifetime for this structural, and we are specifying 100 years of lifetime for this structure. So overall, the catenary system, this is one of the most sensitive interface of the railway systems, and that should be maintained more accurately in order to not have perturbation in the operation. So the traction return current system. So this one is actually hidden, and I think many of you maybe wondered why there is only one catenary wire on the train, and how the current can flow. And the answer is the current is flowing back in the rails, but not only. And this is one of the problem. There is the rail is connected to the ground. And in that way, one important part of the current is flowing also in the earth around the track. So this causes different phenomena that are actually electromagnetic perturbation. That could be also issue for the safety or maintenance of track if we have some over voltage in the metallic structure close to the track, and that's also causing problem with the signaling telecommunication systems who are close to this electrification, and that's required to be then immunized. Yeah. And then we have traction substation. So this is the part which is feeding the overhead catenary system with the required power. So this is actually this part of which belong to the railway infrastructure that is connected to the high voltage electrical grid of the country with different voltage, typically 110 to 20 or 330 kilovolts. And there is a set of transformers from high voltage to medium voltage in order to deliver the tension which is needed for the electrification around 25 kV, and more precisely between 22 and 28 kilovolts. There are different devices, then there are switchgears, measurement, protection system that are associated to the substation. And of course, all of this is controlled from the operation control center, which is in charge to the switch on, switch off, protect all these different elements of electrification. So I would propose to go for some questions, if any.
Indeed. Now we have two questions, but before we ask them, I apologize. Perhaps there was an internet glitch to some participants. I see some of you dropped off the meeting. I hope you can reconnect. But indeed, we have first two questions. So I would like to start by this one. Do you expect reduced operational speed due to the heat, as we can see it in the summer in France, for example?
I hope not, because that would mean the global warming is even worse than we expect. But that's a very good question, because it's very important to have such system design according to the actual climatic conditions. So this is one important parameter. This, of course, in all our specification, but additionally, it was a specific study regarding the climate change and how the climate could evaluate in the coming decades was implemented in Rail Baltica in order to specify and to plan such phenomena. But let's say globally, I would say, in general, the speed reduction due to the heat, as there is in France, in all Southern Europe, this is mostly problematic at the track level, but not so much as a catenary level, provided the maintenance was made properly, and there is also different adjustment to be made between winter and summer. So for the catenary part, this is not planned, and probably not also for the track part in our climate of Baltic states.
Also, we have a question. Are there any backup power sources that will be used to power up the line? So with any backup system?
Yeah, that's also very a good point. So the power which is needed for hauling the trains is, as we will see, is quite important. We already saw the rolling stock needs. And for this reason, you can only power of the national grid. You cannot have one power, auxiliary power, we can be used, except some very limited case, to all the trains as backup. But all of this substation, high voltage connection to the grid, and most of the part of the electrification are actually redundant in order to be able to have a backup solutions. There is a different degraded mode which are analyzed with different backup line, backup from one substation to another, that allow to face the system. But all the power is coming from the national grid.
And the last question so far that we have received is about what kind of poles we're planning to use, concrete or steel?
Yeah, this is also interesting points. We have been performing one analysis. We have already different information assessment. The decision is not yet taken, but it's more probably we will use steel poles. So we analyze this on different parameters. One is the life cycle cost. So what is the lifetime of such poles, and what are the cost cost of investment to purchase them and also to maintain them. And the overall cost is the main parameter. The other one is also the embedded energy that is needed to manufacture this one pole. So decision will be taken in the coming times.
The questions have started to pour in, Jean-Marc. I have one more. What measures were proposed to reduce the voltage asymmetry in the external power supply system?
I think this question probably we can keep for the next session after we present the feeding, the way different feeding systems of the electrification system.
Very well. So let's proceed then.
So the feeding distribution systems, actually, we have different ones. So the in 25 kilovolt traction, the first one is called one time 25 kilovolt. This is simple ones. When you have one traction substation which feeding one electrical section, 20 to 40 kilometers, depending on the traffic. And this is composed of one simple catenary with the, okay, there are the AEW and BEC. This is grounding cables. And this OCS is simply connected to the substation 25 kilovolt, and the ground is connected to the rail traction return current. So if we look a little bit, zoom a little bit out, we can see these 125 systems with 3 substations, and all of these substations are feeding these 20 to 40 kilometers. In these drawings, we have we can see we have 2 transformers. They are actually not working at the same times, but this is for redundancy reasons. But this is a backup transformer of the substation. And we have 3 electrical sections. So you can see above the train that there are 3 sections of the catenary, and you have 1 separation sections between these sections. So, and what is the reason of these separation sections? This is because we are using different pairs of phase in the substations. As railway electrification need to have only 2 phases, because we are powering the trains between the catenary and the rails, and the electrical transmission grid use 3-phased. There is we can have a connection problems, and we have to connect only 2 phases. But we have, for this reason, we have to alternate the phase, not use the same phase in different substations. This is a request from the grid that we'll detail a bit further. So you can see how it is organized for this 11025 solution. So then we go to the 2x25 solution, which is in principle the ones that will be implemented on Rail Baltica. That's let's say the mainstream solution, subject to further detailed analysis. So what are the difference? We can see in blue in the drawings that we have one additional feeder that we call negative feeder, which is added to the overhead catenary systems. And the substation, the transformer is equipped with actually 3 connections. So one is the ground, but other one is we call plus 25 kV, and the other one is minus 25 kV. So that's not a negative current, this is alternative current, but they are in phase oppositions together. And this is installed like this. And we will have auto transformers that are implemented every 10 to 15 kilometers. Yeah. So this is the structure of this 2x25 kV, but we need to check this a bit further. So you can see the auto transformer centers. So auto transformers, maybe I will just come back. This was on the previous slide, this small device. Actually, this is auto transformer is used to repower the trains from the negative feeder to repower the positive feeder, just to make it on the simpler way. And then we have this quite interesting situation with the current. So if we look now on where the train is located, you could see that on the right side of the picture, you have one, the auto transformer center, and you have another one just on the front of the trains. And you can see that the trains actually is feeded from both sides of the catenary by from 1/4 on the catenary by auto transformers, and 3/4 of the current is coming from the left side for the over auto transformer closest to substation. And then we have also some current with going in the negative feeder. If we look this return traction current, we can see that only half of the intensity of we use to power the train, so the I is the intensity to power the train, comes back through the rails compared to previous solution where the full intensity was coming back. But then if we look more close to the substation in the area where there are no trains between auto transformer and substation, then we can see that all the intensity is going through the feeders and not from the return traction current. So this is actually all these different spread of current are very important. There are two reasons. So first, through the rails, we have seen that it has some different consequences and problems of this traction return current. So when we can fully conduct this power through the feeders and catenary, it is much easier. But also we have symmetry of the current, and this is helped to reduce all this electromagnetic effect of the railway electrification on the train, but also all the neighborhood part of the railway. If we zoom out on this part, we can see for this 2 times 25 kilovolt system, so we even for every substation, we are now powering 2 electrical sections, and there is then a separation section at the level of the substation and another one between. So these systems and the use of feeder allows also to actually to feed the electrical section of the catenary, which are longest, so to 25 to 45 kilometers. And then in consequence, we can implement a substation only to 50 to 90 kilometers. So now let's analyze a bit further the two. Actually, there are two topics that are very important and very the main one that we have to deal with in order to design our system. And the first one, this is a phase voltage and balance issue. So this is the consequence of the fact that we are connecting two-phase device on three-phase electrical grid. And that's causing an unbalance of the load. One phase is without electrical load and the two other are loaded. And that means the voltage of two phase will be lower than the first one. And this actually, this unbalance of phase is something which is very regulated by the electrical grid. And that could become critical in case at the place we are connecting to the high voltage lines, the power is actually limited, low. This unbalance, as the railway is quite a strong consumer of electricity, will cause unbalance on the network. And that's very important to remain under the limit, especially in the peak hours, as we have seen when we have the most highest power. So this unbalanced problem is more sensitive in 2 times 25, and the reason is if we have more powerful substation in 2 times 25 to power longer section. So there are different solutions to these systems. One is to install unbalanced compensation device. That's active system that are actually one of the possibilities, but that should be analyzed case per case. So second aspect, which is technically very important, this is the voltage drop. So obviously, the voltage which is available at the catenary for the pantograph collection will decrease the further we are from the traction substation. And so this is a limiting factor to reduce the number of TSS. So that, as we have seen, and we can say we can see, sorry, by the on these pictures, with 2 times 25, the voltage drop is reduced. Yeah. And then this is exactly what allows to increase the distance between traction substations. Yeah. But if we have less substation with still the same number of trains to power, we need more power substation. And then the voltage imbalance will be more problematic. So the truth is in the middle. We have always to find what is the most optimal solution, considering the train traffic we have, the type of line, especially gradient that we have, and all the specificities of the high voltage network which helps power our electrification system. And this is a optimization exercise to be made using software simulation tools, and that in general requires several iterations of analysis. So then there is a third feeding distribution system that can be used, and this is maybe the less implemented so far, but this is quite interesting one. This is the static frequency converter. So this system will take the electrical grid power and will reduce for a transformer, three-phase transformer, and then will use a three-phase rectifier to convert the AC current to DC, and then use a single phase inverter to convert the DC to AC. So in this, with such configuration, we have not anymore any phase imbalance in the network. So this question is this is solving this topic for that side. If we look this question, sorry. Other aspect, we can feed a longer electrical section. And why? As we have not to alternate the phase, we can use two traction substation to power the same electrical section. We can feed in parallel. And you can see on this diagram of voltage drop that in this situation, the voltage drop will decrease until the equidistance between substation, and then will rise up again until the next one. Actually, one train is feeding by two substations in such configuration, and not only by one until the electrical sectioning, as it is the case in 1x25 or 2x25. So there are different parameters to be considered about this feeding system. So in the last one, we have the question of higher capex and opex, and more complex technology. But all these different feeding shall be analyzed in case per case to find the most optimum solution with the best life cycle cost perspective. So we can maybe answer some questions. I think this question about measure to reduce the voltage asymmetry in the external power supply system. So I think that was covered by these answers. We have to reduce, but we have to exactly fit in the limit that will be set up by the different electrical grids of the Baltic states. With our system, and we have to demonstrate that we fit in this limit. So we'll have to reduce this in the simulation. If we will try to avoid active systems like unbalanced compensation, or also this SFC, as it is most costly, and solution were more require more maintenance, but we cannot say this until the full analysis is made to make the detailed design of the electrification system. Some other question?
No more questions. So far we can proceed.
Yeah. So what will be the main feature of Rail Baltica electrification? So this is Europe's largest railway electrification project, managed as once. Normally, different high-speed line has been built in Europe, even big-scale projects, but this electrification system are non-bid managed so far with 870 kilometers in the single project. That is the case of Rail Baltica. So 870 kilometers of double track. So this is the length from Lithuanian-Polish border to Tallinn, plus a branch lines that we have. So Kaunas Vilnius, around Kaunas, around Riga, and the 2 Muuga port. So that's all together make about 2,000 kilometers of overhead catenary systems and more than 50,000 masts to install. So we'll be connected to Polish railway networks. At the border with Poland, the electrification will be also 25 kV. So then the interface with Polish railway network will be normally quite simple. The capex of this electrification system is around 500 million euro. And the operational expenditures, the maintenance operation costs are estimated to 12 million euro per year. So this is a little bit more in details the scheme we planned for the electrification system in 2025. We would get 13 traction substations that will be implemented, so 3 in Estonia, 4 in Latvia, and 6 in Lithuania. So the other traction supply technology will be also considered, depending all the parameters that we have already explained. Altogether, the installed power for all the substation will be 660 megavolt ampere for these 2025 solutions. And the traction power, installed power for different substation case from 2 times 50 MVA to 2 times 30 MVA. So this is regarding the energy consumption. So we have some figures about energy consumption. So from in the Baltic state themselves on the left part of this table, the estimate of Rail Baltica, which is planned. So this is in gigawatt-hour per year. And all together, Rail Baltica will consume about 3% of the overall Baltic state electricity. So we already committed with the support of the states to purchase only renewable electricity from certified suppliers. So that's already commitment that we are doing, as many other countries in Europe are doing. We will also implement regenerative braking, so that system allows to collect one part of the electricity when the train is decelerating and braking, and to reuse this for other trains. So we can expect to save over 10% of electricity using this device. And we will also implement eco-driving functionalities, so that will be support and indication to train drivers about optimum speed to use the less possible energy when driving these trains. Some questions?
Not yet.
So now maybe we can go back to the question of decarbonization of the transport, and just to try to think what is the best way to do this using some electrification system. And now there are different, I think, research and the new technology that are aiming to reduce the dependence to fossil fuel for the transport, and especially for the trains. And one of these ways is hydrogen. But what I think is important is to understand what is the efficiency of these solutions. So first of all, hydrogen is not energy as itself, it's also a way to transport energy. This is a vector of energy. And then we have to look what are the different efficiency of the process when we are using hydrogen from well to wheel. And we can see for the first one that overall energy efficiency, this is below 29%. So this is comparable to one diesel engine when we have energy efficiency around 27, but this is fossil fuel and associated CO2 emission and pollution also involved in such in the diesel traction mode. Then if we have electrification systems as with power from the grid with renewable energy, but for the efficiency that's the same figures, we can see that the overall efficiency of the component are quite high, and for this reason we have at the to the wheel 83% of overall efficiency of the system. So only for the point of view of the energy efficiency, we can see that classical electrification system using renewable energy optimized is the most efficient way. We have another type of system which is battery traction, so that's also some system which is now under development and testing and even operation. So this has an overall efficiency of 65%. So altogether, this electric traction has the most energetic efficiency, but that doesn't mean the other systems shall be discarded. They are just relevant, but for other application when we have low traffic lines or for shunting applications. And then more globally, if we look how to decarbonize the transport, we can say that the first point will be to implement the most efficient traction system for the guided transport. And then we can use only renewable electricity. The third one is the most energy sustainable mode. That's in our case typically railway, but not only. Should have the maximum performances. So that maximum performance that delivers the best service. That could be discussed in the travel time, availability, punctuality. And that should foster one transfer from all the transport mode we are using more fuel energy and more emitting more carbon in order they are moving to this more sustainable mode. And for all the last miles and the individual transport that are need still to be used to try to adopt also low carbon traction mode to also reduce their impact. Thank you.
I think there is a lot of information to digest. I don't see any questions coming now. Perhaps we can maybe wait a minute, probably some last questions will pop up. Until we were waiting for questions, I just wanted to inform the participants that our next session will take place next week, same time here. I wanted just to remind that we will be talking about building information management at Rail Baltica with our colleague Raetis Bušmanis. And here, maybe no more questions I see. On that note, I think, Jean-Marc, maybe we will close this session. This information, this presentation will be available also on our YouTube channel. Look up Rail Baltica YouTube. You can have a look there and use this material for your study purposes as much as you want. If you have any specific questions, then please do come back to us. It was a heavy topic. I thank you all for remaining with us all this time, and I wish to see you all next week. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.